Hi, I'm Dave Steinfeld, the owner of the law office of David Steinfeld and an expert in Florida business litigation law. This is a video about Florida's landlord-tenant laws for the real estate investor. Now, there's no legal advice in this video, but for that you can contact me through davidsteinfeld.com. And while you're on that site, please take a look at the other helpful videos and articles on Florida business law and other topics. Thanks for watching. Okay, I'm next going to transition into the topic of Florida's landlord-tenant law and what I'll call debt structuring, which is kind of a broad made-up term, if you will, for things like lease with an option to buy, that type of investment. Now, this area, when we start talking about debt structuring, should you buy a property coming out of a short sale? Should you buy tax certificates? This is very, very specific to an individual circumstance. I can't give you legal advice through this presentation, and I would be throwing darts at a dartboard with a blindfold if I tried to tell any one of you, go ahead and do this. I might as well just tell you what to bet on at the tables in Vegas. So this is really designed to tell you sort of a broader overview of the area so you can have some understanding of it. Florida's Landlord-Tenant Act, which is what I'm going to first deal with before we go into what I'll call the debt structuring. Florida's Landlord-Tenant Act resides in one particular chapter of Florida law. It's Chapter 83. You can find it online. You can look it up. It's divided into subsections. One is residential. The other one they call non-residential, which is commercial. It gives certain requirements of what has to be in leases, and it outlines the duties of a landlord and of a tenant. But most importantly, what the landlord-tenant statutes do is provide for a mechanism for eviction. Now, there's no self-help in Florida. You don't have automatic evictions, and you can't just tell a tenant, if you buy a property with a tenant in it, or you're a real estate investor and you put a tenant in it, you can't just tell them, out you go. It has to go through the courts. There has to be due process. Part of that due process and the cornerstone to every eviction, be it commercial or residential, and even more so in the residential sense because you're taking someone out of their home, is the notice. Florida law provides for two kinds of notice. There's a notice if there's a defect or failure in the payment. That's the 3-day notice. That's what you commonly deal with. Then there's a 7-day notice. The 7-day notice deals with defects in performance. If the tenant is supposed to perform some particular act, replacing the carpet or painting the walls or something, and they don't, if that is a material provision of the lease, that can be grounds for an eviction using that 7-day notice. But again, you want to have counsel reviewing your lease and make sure that you have very clear and unambiguous terms in the lease and that those provisions are fair and balanced and in accordance with Florida's landlord-tenant law. Where property owners and property managers always make the greatest mistakes is in these notices. There are certain things that you can put in the notice, certain things you can't put in these eviction notices. The eviction notice, as I said earlier, is the cornerstone to an eviction. If you don't do the notice properly, the court has no choice but to throw the eviction out. If there's an attorney's fee provision in your lease, you may wind up paying the tenant's attorney's fees for the failed eviction, and then you've got to start the whole thing all over again. So the best way to do it, the best way to conserve money in any of those matters is to consult with counsel and make sure that the notice, whichever one you're using, is correct and appropriate and done right under Florida law. Now, as we move into the area of what I'll call sort of a self-invented term of debt structuring, that encompasses all different unique little investment opportunities or vehicles. That encompasses short sales, that encompasses tax certificates, that encompasses leases with options to buy. These areas get into very, very factually specific scenarios of what's right for your situation. I can't stand up here and tell you that it's a good investment for you to buy tax certificates on a particular property. I can explain to you what the process is, but that business decision of whether or not it's a good investment has to be made by you, and that's beyond the scope of what we could do in this presentation. But just very briefly, when you're talking about leases with options to buy, for example, if you're going to get involved in something like that, you have to be sure that the conditions of the lease are satisfied. Because if you fail to perform under the lease, you can lose the option to buy. And if you're in a particularly good real estate market and the property is increasing in value and you've got a lease on a property with the option to buy, you could wind up throwing away the opportunity to activate that option, purchase the property, and flip it or sell it for a lot more, because your lease could be, say it's a multi-year lease, your lease value for the property could start down here. The property value could increase over time as the market improves, and you could wind up buying the property, activating that option at the conclusion of the lease for the first initial price, and you've got all that gain that you're working with. But if you don't perform the terms of the lease, then you could wind up losing that option. So you want to be careful that you do perform those properly.